my sweet viewers. Thank you for settling in with me again. If my voice feels like home to you, go on and like this video, and maybe subscribe. It truly helps keep this little storytelling porch light on. Now, let me tell you about the moment my daughter whispered that she had a new boyfriend. Her voice trembled like she was scared to let his name slip into the air. I asked when I'd get to meet him, and she stiffened so fast it made my heart drop. She forced a smile, but her eyes darted away like she was hiding something she wasn't ready to face, or something she didn't want me to face. And right then, I felt the kind of fear a mother knows deep in her bones. She brushed off my questions with a shaky laugh, saying they were taking things slow. But that didn't line up with the glow she carried lately. My daughter had always been open with me, too open sometimes. But now, she guarded her phone like it held the last breath in her body. Every time it buzzed, she'd slip away to answer it in whispers. I didn't want to push her, but that cold feeling in my stomach grew heavier each day. I tried telling myself she was just in love, but the way she hid her smile whenever his name came up made it feel less like love and more like fear wearing a mask. One night, I heard her pacing her room long after midnight. Her footsteps were quick, restless, almost panicked. I stood by her door, hesitating, my hand hovering near the knob. She was on the phone, whispering urgently. I can't tell her, not yet. She won't understand. My heart squeezed her. That meant me. I backed away before she could hear me breathing, but the words stuck to my chest like thorns. Why was she afraid of me knowing what could be so heavy it kept her up at night? The silence after her call ended felt louder than her pacing. The next morning, she tiptoed around me like she was trying not to set off an alarm. Her eyes were puffy, her hair unbrushed, and her smile lowered. It was the most fragile thing I'd ever seen on her face. I asked if she wanted breakfast, and she said no so quickly it startled us both. Then she grabbed her bag and rushed out the door, claiming she had errands. But here's the part that twisted my gut. She never took the car. She walked, fast, like somebody was waiting for her. Like someone told her not to let me see where she was going. By noon, I couldn't sit still. A mother knows when her child is carrying something too heavy alone. So I grabbed my coat and followed the path she usually walked. Halfway down the block, I saw her in the distance, standing on the corner, talking to a tall young man in a dark hoodie. She kept glancing around nervously, like the world was closing in. And when she reached out to touch his arm, he jerked back like her hand burned him. My breath caught. Their body language didn't look like love. It looked like fear meeting fear. And that was the moment I realized something was deeply, dangerously wrong. I froze on the sidewalk, watching them from a distance, too scared to step closer, and too terrified to turn back. My daughter kept wringing her hands like she was apologizing for something she hadn't done yet. And that young man, he kept scanning the street like he expected danger to jump out at any moment. Then she said something too soft for me to hear, but he shook his head violently, backing away from her. That's when I saw it, her face crumpling, not in anger, in shame. Shame that didn't belong on a girl who used to tell me everything. I pressed my hand to my chest, feeling it pound. wondering what kind of boy makes a girl hide her soul from her own mother. He turned abruptly and walked off, leaving her standing there with her shoulders slumped like someone had cut the strings holding her together. I stepped behind a tree, not ready for her to see me, not ready to face the truth I could feel building in the air. She wiped her eyes, took a deep breath, and headed toward the opposite street instead of coming home. I hesitated, torn between calling out her name or letting this hidden world unfold just a little longer. I followed again, slow and careful, telling myself a mother shouldn't sneak like this, but fearing that if I didn't, I would miss the moment everything changed. She walked into a small coffee shop I'd never seen her visit before, slipping into a corner booth like she'd been there 100 times. Moments later, the barista placed a drink in front of her without asking her order. My stomach twisted. She had routines here, secrets here. She checked her phone, typed something with trembling fingers, then deleted it. She tried again, deleted it again. Finally, she held her face in her hands like she was praying for some kind of escape. I watched through the window, fighting the urge to rush in, wrap my arms around her, and demand the truth. But something told me she was balancing on the edge of something too fragile for sudden movements. When she finally lifted her head, her eyes were red, her jaw clenched in a way I hadn't seen since she was a little girl trying not to cry. She unlocked her phone and opened a photo, one I couldn't see clearly through the glass. But whatever was in it made her whisper, "I can't lose her, not again." Her, she was afraid of losing me. That realization hit my chest like a blow. She tucked her phone away and hurried out of the shop, brushing past people like she couldn't breathe. I stepped back from the window, afraid she'd see me, but even more afraid she wouldn't turn back home. I felt like I was chasing a shadow of the girl I once knew. She crossed the street with quick, anxious steps, heading toward the old community center, the one she used to volunteer at before everything about her life suddenly shifted. I followed from a distance, my heart in my throat, praying she wasn't involved in anything dangerous. She stepped behind the building into a narrow alleyway and pulled out her phone again. This time, her hands shook so badly she nearly dropped it. Then she whispered into the receiver, "I tried, but she'll never forgive me if she finds out who you are." My knees went weak. Who you are? What kind of man was my daughter seeing that required forgiveness before introduction? I pressed myself against the wall of the building, my breath caught halfway up my throat as I listened. Her voice shook with every word she spoke, like she was standing between two storms and didn't know which one would hit first. No, I didn't tell her anything," she whispered. "She can't know yet. She'll hate me. She'll hate you even more." My body turned cold. Hate. Who was this man she thought I would despise on sight? I strained to hear his voice through the phone, but all I caught was a low murmur, too deep to recognize. My daughter nodded, then said softly, "I'm scared too." And that right there, that broke me. She hung up quickly, shoved the phone into her jacket, and leaned against the brick wall, staring at the ground as though she were searching for answers in the cracks. I almost stepped out, almost called her name, but something held me back. Mother's instinct, maybe fear, maybe both. When when she finally walked away, I slipped into the alley she'd been standing in and looked around. Nothing unusual. No sign of the man she was talking to. But the fear lingering in the air, that was real. I touched the wall where she had leaned, feeling the coldness she left behind, wondering if she felt alone because of me or because of him. I walked home slowly, each step heavy with questions I didn't want the answers to. When she came through the door an hour later, she tried to smile at me, tried so hard, but the smile trembled at the corners, like she was holding back a confession she didn't dare release. I asked gently, "Baby, you okay?" And she paused, just long enough to break my heart. "I'm fine, Mama," she said, her voice too thin, too rehearsed. She brushed past me, but not before I caught a glimpse of fear in her eyes. Fear of me, fear for me, or fear that I might see the truth hiding behind her silence. That night, I heard her crying again. Soft, muffled sobs that she tried to swallow as though she didn't deserve to make noise. I stood outside her door, my hand hovering just inches from knocking, but something in me hesitated. I didn't want to frighten her, push her further away. Then I heard her whisper into the darkness, "Why did it have to be him? Why him?" I felt the floor tilt under my feet. It wasn't just fear, it was conflict, like her heart was stuck between loyalty and danger. I walked back to my room, but the weight of those 3 words followed me like a shadow. The next morning, I decided I couldn't let the silence swallow us whole. I made her favorite breakfast grits with a little butter and just a pinch of sugar, the way she loved since she was small. She came into the kitchen looking tired, drained, older than her years. When she sat down, I placed the bowl in front of her and said softly, "When you're ready to tell me the truth, I'm here." She froze, spoon halfway to her lips, her eyes widening just a little. Then she whispered, "Mama, I don't know how to tell you without breaking everything." Her voice cracked, and I knew then whatever she was hiding wasn't just about a boyfriend. It was about me. Her words hung in the air like smoke. I wanted to reach across the table and tell her it would be okay, but I didn't. I needed to understand what storm she was carrying alone. She shifted in her chair, eyes darting to the window as though expecting someone to be watching, and whispered, "Mama, he's not who he seems. He knows things about me, about us, things that shouldn't exist." My chest tightened so much it hurt to breathe. Who had she met that knew secrets only my family should hold? And why did she look at me like I might already know? I stayed quiet, letting her spill what she could, sensing the fragile balance between trust and fear. She told me about his family, about his past, and how she found pieces that didn't add up. Every word made my stomach twist tighter. She wasn't lying, something was wrong. "Mama," I wanted to introduce him slowly, but now I think it's too late. My heart lurched. Too late for what? And why was my own daughter speaking in riddles, afraid even to speak plainly? I realized then this wasn't about teenage rebellion or love. It was about survival, though I didn't yet know whose. The following days, I watched her closely, searching for signs I couldn't yet name. She avoided my gaze, fiddled with her phone obsessively, and left the house at odd hours. Each return was more hurried, more tense, like she carried a storm in her backpack. that she couldn't unload. And every time she spoke about him, her words trembled with fear she couldn't hide. I felt helpless, desperate to protect her, but knowing that stepping too close might push her farther away. Something told me this man wasn't just a boyfriend. He was a shadow tethered to a past we had both tried to bury. One evening, I followed her again, staying at a distance so she wouldn't see me. She went to a park we used to visit when she was small, the one where laughter used to float like birdsong. But tonight, it was different. She sat on a bench, hands wrapped around her knees, and whispered into her phone, "I can't let her see you, not yet. It'll destroy her." My hands went cold. Destroy her? What could this man do to my daughter, or to me? That required secrecy, so deep she feared my very presence. The words repeated in my head, echoing in a rhythm I couldn't ignore. I watched her stand and pace, phone pressed to her ear, words too quiet for me to catch. Then she froze, eyes widening, mouth trembling. Something or someone had crossed a line I couldn't see. She whispered sharply, "No, you promised." She can't know. Her voice broke, a raw edge that pierced my heart. And then she hung up abruptly, sinking onto the bench, burying her face in her hands. I stayed hidden, wanting to rush in, wanting to demand answers, but I felt the danger in waiting. Whatever this secret was, it wasn't safe to confront head-on, not yet. The fear in her body had become fear for both of us. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her on that bench, trembling, whispering secrets I couldn't hear. My mind raced. Was it just a controlling boyfriend, or something far worse? I kept replaying her words. She can't know, it'll destroy her. Destroy her. My own child, hiding from me as though the world itself had turned against her. I tossed in bed, heart hammering, imagining every possible danger. When I finally sat by the window, staring into the night, I realized fear had invaded our home, and I had no idea who was holding the leash or why my daughter felt powerless to resist. The next day, I tried to reach her gently. I asked how school was, if she wanted breakfast, anything to break the tension. But she froze, her eyes flickering with panic, then darting to the door. She muttered she had errands, leaving me with an emptiness I hadn't felt in years. My mind spun with questions I dared not ask aloud. Who had frightened her so? And why did she carry that fear like a heavy cloak, hiding her warmth and laughter from me? I felt the distance between us grow with every step she took away, and the thought of what secrets she might be guarding tightened my chest like steel. By afternoon, curiosity and dread overtook me. I followed her quietly, keeping my distance, heart hammering with every step she took. She didn't go home. She didn't go to school. Instead, she slipped into an old neighborhood we hadn't visited in years. Her pace was hurried, almost desperate. And when she reached the small, worn-down building at the end of the street, my stomach sank. She hesitated at the door, glancing around nervously before slipping inside. I wanted to scream for her to come back, to run to safety, but I stayed hidden, fearing what I would see, fearing what she had stepped into without me. I waited across the street, heart pounding, watching her disappear into a dimly lit room. Inside, I could see a tall figure leaning against a wall, hands shoved in his pockets, head bowed. My daughter's hand brushed his arm, tentative, almost pleading. I swallowed hard, realizing this was no ordinary meeting. The way she flinched at his touch told me she wasn't in control, and that scared me more than I could put into words. She whispered something too soft for me to hear, and he responded with a low murmur. That single moment made me understand. The man she loved or feared held power over her, and she didn't know how to escape. A sudden flash of anger and protectiveness surged through me. I wanted to burst through that door, grab my daughter, and drag her away to safety. But instinct and fear of making things worse kept me rooted. She laughed nervously at something he said, but it wasn't laughter. It was a mask, a survival tactic. My stomach churned as I realized the man wasn't just a boyfriend. He was a shadow from the past, someone tied to secrets she couldn't tell me yet. The tension between them was sharp, almost dangerous. I stayed in the shadows, my eyes never leaving them, knowing that one wrong move could shatter everything. The next day, I tried talking to her, my voice gentle, careful, as though speaking too loudly could shatter her. She avoided my eyes, fiddling with her phone, pretending to read something. But I knew better. I felt her tension radiate in waves, like a storm I couldn't control. "Mama, I just want you to trust me," she whispered finally, but her words trembled with something unsaid. Trust. I realized then that the fear in her voice wasn't just for herself. It was for me too. Something or someone had convinced her that my presence could be dangerous, and my own heart twisted with helplessness at the thought of the shadow looming over my child. I followed her again that afternoon, keeping to the streets, blending into the crowd. She walked briskly, shoulders tight, eyes darting as if watching for invisible threats. My pulse pounded with every step. I felt the weight of the unknown pressing against me. She stopped at a quiet cafe, and my stomach lurched seeing her meet the same man. They exchanged glances filled with tension, like a secret conversation written in body language I could only guess at. The fear in her posture was unmistakable. She wasn't just nervous about me seeing him. She was terrified of what he might do if anyone found out. Anyone at all. I crouched behind a corner, barely daring to breathe, heart hammering. She laughed softly, but it wasn't joy. It was forced, brittle, like a fragile mask. He leaned close, whispering something low, and she flinched almost imperceptibly. That small movement revealed everything. She wasn't in control, and she knew it. My mind spun, imagining the conversations I hadn't heard, the threats I couldn't see. And then the words she muttered under her breath, barely audible. I can't let her know, not yet. She would never forgive me. My chest tightened. What could she be hiding from me that carried such weight? And why did it terrify her so much? The next evening, she came home later than usual, looking exhausted and on edge. I could see it in her hands, trembling slightly as she put down her bag. Her eyes darted to the door like she expected someone to follow her. I sat quietly, letting her settle, sensing that tonight, the secret was closer than ever to spilling. "Mama, I tried to protect you," she murmured, almost to herself. My heart sank. Protect me from whom or from what? I realized then that this wasn't just about a boyfriend. This was a man who held power over her life, and by extension, a shadow over mine. And I had no idea how far it stretched. I decided I couldn't wait any longer. That night, I knocked lightly on her bedroom door, heart hammering, hand trembling. "Can we talk?" I whispered. She hesitated, then opened it slowly, her eyes filled with fear and relief at the same time. I stepped inside and sat beside her, careful not to touch her, careful not to frighten her. She exhaled shakily, finally letting the words spill. "Mama, I didn't tell you before because I was scared you'd hate him and me, and I couldn't risk losing you." Her voice broke, and in that moment, I realized the truth was bigger than love, bigger than fear. It was something that could change everything we thought we knew about our lives. Her words hung in the air like a storm about to break. I felt my chest tighten as I tried to understand the weight she carried. "Mama, he knows things," she whispered, voice trembling. "Things from the past, things I thought were buried." My heart skipped. What secrets could a young man possibly know about my daughter, or about me, that made her fear him so deeply? I reached out, almost touching her shoulder, but she flinched, eyes wide. I realized then that this was no ordinary boyfriend. Something dangerous, something tied to long-buried truths, had found its way into our lives, and my daughter was trapped between fear and loyalty. She clutched her phone like a lifeline, constantly checking for messages, as if the next one might decide our fate. Every glance she stole toward the door, every hesitation, spoke volumes. I tried to remind myself to breathe, to think, but my mind raced with possibilities. Was he threatening her? Was it something from her past or mine? The quiet in our house felt suffocating, filled with the weight of unspoken words. I watched her walk from room to room, restless, whispering to herself. Fear had taken residence in her body, and I could see it in every movement, every subtle flinch, and I knew deep down that the truth she held was far bigger than any argument or teenage mistake. Days passed, each one stretching longer than the last. She became quieter, shadows under her eyes growing darker, her laughter disappearing like smoke. I tried subtle questions, gentle nudges, anything to coax her, but she evaded every attempt, shrinking into herself. I felt helpless, watching the girl I raised hide from me in plain sight. Then, one afternoon, she stepped outside, phone clutched tightly, whispering urgently, "I can't let her know, not now, not ever." My hands shook. Those words weren't about me. They were about something far larger, something sinister. And my heart pounded because I realized that whatever this secret was, it wasn't just about love. It was about survival. That evening, curiosity and fear clawed at me. I followed her again, careful not to be seen, my pulse racing with every step. She moved faster than usual, like she was being guided by urgency rather than choice. She stopped at a small, familiar cafe, the one tucked away where few people noticed. And there, he was the man she had been trying to protect me from, sitting across from her, his face unreadable, calm, yet menacing in its stillness. They whispered, leaned close, their words shielded by distance, but her body language spoke louder than any sentence. I swallowed hard. He wasn't just a boyfriend. He was someone with power over her, and perhaps over our entire family. I crouched behind a lamppost, barely daring to breathe, watching her flinch at his slightest gesture. His hand brushed hers, and she recoiled slightly, like the air burned her. My heart twisted with helplessness. What had he done to make her so afraid? She whispered, voice cracking, I can't let her know. Not yet. She wouldn't understand." My stomach lurched. She was talking about me, my presence, my love, and my protection. Yet fearing I couldn't withstand the truth, and suddenly I understood. The danger wasn't just her fear. It was the power he held over both of us, a secret poised to destroy everything if it ever came to light. The next morning, I watched her move through the house like a ghost, quiet and tense. Even the way she held her coffee cup betrayed her unease. She kept glancing at the door, as though expecting someone to appear at any moment. I wanted to reach out, to pull her into my arms and shield her from whatever was haunting her. But I knew she wouldn't let me. Her silence screamed louder than words ever could, and deep down, I feared that the secret she carried was bigger than either of us, one that could shatter our lives if exposed too soon. My hands shook as I tried to steady myself, realizing I was running out of time. By noon, I couldn't resist following her again. She slipped into a narrow alley behind a grocery store, phone pressed to her ear. I stayed hidden, heart hammering, listening to whispers I couldn't catch. Then I saw him tall, imposing, his presence commanding without a single word. She flinched at his touch, her fingers curling in on themselves. I swallowed hard. My daughter wasn't just nervous, she was afraid, and the fear in her body, the way she glanced over her shoulder, told me everything. This man wasn't simply a boyfriend. He held leverage over her, and she was terrified of what would happen if that leverage was exposed. That evening, she came home late, avoiding my eyes, her bag slung over one shoulder. I watched her from the hallway as she set it down, trembling slightly. She spoke softly, almost inaudibly. "Mama, I didn't want you to see him like that." My heart clenched. Like what? What had I just missed? Her hands shook as she removed her coat, and I realized the fear she carried wasn't just for herself. It was for me, too. Something about this man had put her in a position where even her mother could be considered a threat to her safety, and that knowledge settled in my chest like a stone. I couldn't move. Late that night, I lay awake, mind spinning with possibilities. I couldn't stop picturing her flinching at his touch, whispering warnings I wasn't allowed to hear. Every memory of her childhood flashed before me, her laughter, her trust, her openness, and I mourned the girl I had lost in shadows and secrets. I realized that this wasn't just about fear. It was about survival, about a past neither of us fully understood catching up. And as I stared at the ceiling, my mind whispered the truth I hadn't yet said aloud. I had to find out who this man really was before it was too late, before he destroyed her or me. The next day, I decided to confront the reality I had been avoiding. I followed her to the park, where she often walked alone, hoping to get a glimpse of what she wouldn't tell me. There he was again, lurking nearby, calm, almost impossibly composed. She flinched when he approached, but he didn't raise his voice, didn't touch her aggressively. Yet the tension radiating from her was unmistakable. I realized then the danger wasn't in violence. It was in control, in the way he could manipulate her with silence, with small gestures, with the weight of secrets neither of us had uncovered. My stomach churned, knowing I was dangerously close to discovering a truth that could change everything. I stayed hidden behind a tree, my heart hammering so loud I was sure she could hear it. She didn't notice me as she walked toward him, hands trembling slightly. Every gesture, every glance, every pause in their conversation screamed fear. He wasn't just a boyfriend. He was someone who knew things, dangerous things, things that could hurt us both. I wanted to run, grab her, and tear her away from him, but my feet refused to move. I realized then that my daughter's trust in me was tempered by fear, and that fear was something I hadn't faced since I was her age. The shadows around them were heavier than the afternoon sun. She stepped back, almost stumbling, and he reached out, but stopped short, giving her space. She whispered something too low for me to hear, and the moment stretched like an eternity. I saw tears glisten in her eyes, but she blinked them away, forcing control over her trembling body. Every instinct screamed at me. She wasn't safe, not fully, not even in the open, and yet she clung to him like she couldn't escape, like she needed him even while he terrified her. I pressed my hand to my chest, feeling it pound violently, realizing that the secret she carried wasn't just hers. It was a threat that could reach into our family and shatter everything we knew. I followed her home later, careful to stay in the shadows. She moved like a woman burdened with more than she could bear, shoulders stiff, movements precise, calculated. Every time she paused to check her phone, I imagined the messages that made her heart race with fear. I wanted to demand answers, but I knew that if I pushed too hard, she'd retreat further, hiding the truth even deeper. She was terrified, but not of me. She feared the consequences of a truth I hadn't yet uncovered, a truth that connected him, and me in ways I couldn't begin to imagine. And that realization made my stomach twist with dread. That night, she came into the kitchen quietly, not making eye contact, pouring herself a glass of water with hands that shook slightly. I tried to act casual, to give her space, but my curiosity burned hotter than any caution. "Mama," she said softly, voice barely audible, "I didn't want to tell you, because if you knew, it could destroy us." My throat went dry. Destroy us. Her words hinted at something bigger than just a relationship, something dangerous, something tied to our family's past. I wanted to ask, to understand, but the fear in her eyes stopped me. Whatever she was hiding, it wasn't just a secret. It was a storm waiting to hit us both. I sat across from her, trying to appear calm while my mind raced. "Honey, I need to know," I whispered. Her eyes met mine briefly, glistening with fear and pain before she looked away. "Mama, I can't tell you everything yet, not until I know he's gone." My heart skipped a beat. Gone? Who did she mean? And why did her words sound like a warning? I felt my body tense, realizing the depth of the danger that had silently crept into our lives. She wasn't hiding a simple boyfriend. She was hiding a secret that could unravel years of safety, trust, and love in the blink of an eye. And I knew the time for hiding was almost over. The next morning, I couldn't ignore the feeling in my chest. My daughter moved around the house cautiously, every glance over her shoulder, every sudden flinch told me the shadow of fear still lingered. I tried to speak softly, to catch her in a moment of calm, but she barely responded. Her eyes darted to the window as though someone could appear at any moment. I realized the danger wasn't just his presence, it was the weight of whatever he knew. A secret so heavy that even my love couldn't shield her from it, and I felt helpless, powerless to intervene until I understood the full truth. Later that day, I followed her again, staying far enough to remain unseen. She entered the same dim alleyway she had before, phone pressed tightly to her ear. His voice was low, but I caught fragments, words like promise and don't tell her. She shivered, wrapping her arms around herself as if the air itself burned. My heart raced. This wasn't a normal teenage romance. It was something calculated, something manipulative. I clenched my fists, knowing that if I didn't uncover the truth soon, whatever held power over her could destroy the fragile trust between us before I even had a chance to protect her. That evening, she returned home later than usual, shoulders tense, eyes scanning the room like she expected him to be waiting inside. She spoke in clipped sentences, avoiding my gaze, and every word seemed rehearsed. I watched her hands, trembling as she removed her coat, and I realized she wasn't just hiding something, she was guarding a fear so deep it could change our lives. My stomach twisted as I wondered what kind of man demanded that level of secrecy, and why my daughter, whom I had raised to be strong, now walked through life like a fragile bird, afraid of being caught. I decided I couldn't wait any longer. That night, I approached her carefully, my voice soft. "Honey, we need to talk," I said. She hesitated, eyes filling with tears, voice trembling. "Mama, I can't, not yet," she whispered. I pressed gently, but she shook her head, like she feared even speaking the truth could cause harm. My heart ached. I realized the secret she carried wasn't small. It was tied to danger, to a past neither of us fully understood, and to a man who wielded control over her in ways I had never imagined. I felt patience was the only way to keep her safe. Hours later, I watched her finally collapse onto her bed, exhausted, phone clutched in her hand. Tears streamed down her cheeks, silent, raw, and filled with terror. She whispered to herself, "I can't let her know, not until it's safe." My chest tightened. Every instinct screamed at me to demand answers. But I stayed back, watching her struggle under a burden I didn't yet fully see. And then it hit me. The danger she feared wasn't just for her. It was for me too. Someone had tangled our lives in a web of secrets, fear, and power. And I knew the next revelation would change everything. The following morning, I woke to silence, the kind that presses on your chest and makes every heartbeat louder. My daughter had left early, slipping out before sunrise, phone pressed to her ear like a shield. I followed at a distance, heart racing, sensing the weight of every secret she carried. She didn't go to school. She didn't stop anywhere familiar. Instead, she moved with purpose, as if every step was dictated by fear. I realized then that this wasn't about love or rebellion. It was about survival. And the man she was protecting me from, or herself from, held a power over her life that I had never imagined. She arrived at a secluded park I didn't recognize as hers, crouching behind a tree to make a call. I stayed hidden, desperate to hear, but knowing that any wrong move could shatter her fragile courage. I caught fragments of her whispered words. "I can't risk it. She mustn't know." My chest tightened. The way she trembled, the way her voice cracked, told me the secret wasn't trivial. This man wasn't just controlling her choices. He had woven a web so tight that she feared even her mother. And I realized the truth lurking behind her fear was darker than I could have imagined. Hours passed, and I watched her leave, moving cautiously, scanning the surroundings as if danger could strike at any moment. Her body language screamed tension, her every glance calculated. I followed slowly, unwilling to let her slip into peril, yet afraid to reveal myself. My mind raced, imagining who this man could be and what he had over her. It wasn't just her heart at stake. It was her safety, her trust, her freedom. And with every step, I felt the weight of the truth pressing closer, the revelation that would shatter the fragile balance between mother and daughter, and perhaps change our lives forever. That night, she returned home quietly, eyes downcast, shoulders stiff. I tried to act casual, pretending not to notice, but I could see the tremor in her hands, the faint sheen of sweat on her brow. She whispered, almost to herself, "I can't, not until it's safe." My stomach churned. I realized the danger wasn't just his presence. It was the secrets he carried, the control he exerted without even touching her. And in that moment, I understood. Whatever she was hiding, whatever he represented, it wasn't just about fear. It was about power, manipulation, and the lengths someone could go to dominate another human soul. I stayed in my room that night, restless, replaying every moment I had seen, every word I had overheard. The shadows of fear and secrecy hung over our home, heavier than any I had felt in years. I knew the truth she carried was about to surface, a revelation that would leave no part of our lives untouched. My hands shook as I prepared myself for it, knowing it would demand courage I wasn't sure I had. And then, in the quiet, I whispered a silent promise. No matter what came, I would face it with her, protect her, and uncover the truth, even if it broke us both in the process. The next morning, I followed her one last time, heart pounding, knowing this could be the moment the truth finally revealed itself. She walked with the same tense steps, phone clutched like a lifeline, glancing over her shoulder as if shadows might follow her. I saw him again, standing in the distance, waiting. Their interaction was brief, whispered, urgent. My chest tightened as I realized he wasn't just a boyfriend. He was connected to a danger from my own past, something I had buried and thought forgotten. And in that moment, I knew the secret she protected was more than hers. It was mine too. She returned home, eyes red, lips pressed tight, and I finally gathered the courage to speak. "Honey, I need you to tell me everything," I said softly. Her hands shook as she reached for mine, but then pulled back. "Mama, I wanted to protect you. He's connected to something you thought was gone." My stomach sank, my breath caught. A secret from my past, the danger that lurked in the present. Fear twisted in my chest. She looked at me with pleading eyes, begging me silently to be patient, to trust her until the right moment. And I realized the truth would change everything. Finally, she spoke. She revealed that the man she'd been hiding wasn't just anyone. He was connected to the man who had once hurt me. The same man I had buried in memory and time. My daughter had discovered him, unknowingly drawn into his web, and had feared my reaction, feared losing me while trying to protect us both. My hands shook, tears filled my eyes, and anger and relief collided in my chest. All these months, the fear, the secrecy, the distance, it had been her way of shielding me. And in that moment, the threads of past and present collided, bringing the hidden danger into the light. I pulled her into my arms, holding her close as her sobs shook her small frame. "Mama, I couldn't tell you. I was scared you'd hate him, scared he'd come for us." My heart ached as I realized how brave she had been, carrying the weight of fear alone. I whispered to her, soft and steady, that nothing could make me hate her, that we would face this together. The man who had haunted both our pasts no longer held power over us because we finally knew, because we finally stood together. The fear that had shadowed our lives began to lift, replaced by a fragile, fierce hope that we could survive anything. As the night settled, I looked at my daughter and whispered softly, "We made it together." Tears ran down both our faces, and I felt the weight of months of fear finally ease. She smiled weakly, exhausted but safe, and I knew our bond had grown stronger than any secret or shadow. If you stayed with us through this story, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. Life throws dark storms at us, but love, patience, and courage can guide us through. Please subscribe if you lived this story with me, and remember, even in fear, holding on to those you love can light the darkest paths.